The day of the business meeting had arrived. "Hi, I'm Julia from DRS Factory. Is John available? We have a meeting scheduled today." As I was returning to my office from an errand, I heard a woman's voice as I passed by the front desk. Instinctively, I turned around. There stood a woman with smooth skin, chestnut-colored long hair and a great figure. I had spoken to her on the phone yesterday, but seeing her in person, I couldn't help but stare. This must be Julia, the representative. Julia noticed my gaze and looked at me with a slightly puzzled expression. "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm John, the person in charge. Thank you for coming today. This way, please," I hurriedly said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the nerves. "Oh, so you're John. Nice to meet you, I'm Julia. I'm looking forward to our meeting today," Julia replied, looking straight into my eyes. Her large, bright eyes and well-defined features. There was no doubt she was a beauty. My heart raced and I felt embarrassed. I tried to look away from her face, but then thought, wait, she looks familiar. And found myself staring at her again. Then, at what an unlucky timing, our CEO, Mr. Smith, walked by at just such a moment. "Whoa, you're staring too much. Just because your business partner was a very beautiful woman," Mr. Smith joked, catching me off guard. I felt even more embarrassed and looked down, avoiding Julia's eyes. Mr. Smith then said, "Oh," and started walking toward Julia and me. "My name is John. I work at a company that designs packaging for products sold on the market. I'm a 30-year-old single man." "John, I heard you lost a new client contract recently. This is why we can't trust a low-educated like you with important work. You can only clean, serve coffee, and photocopy documents, so hurry up and make me a cup of coffee. The stronger the better." Since this morning, my boss, Robert, had been shouting at me. Robert is notorious for being mean to his subordinates and especially looks down on those with less education. As a high school graduate, I often bear the brunt of his harsh words. Robert didn't have to say it like that. "Don't worry about it, John. And it wasn't your fault the new contract fell through. You did great bringing in a new client. The one who ruined it was none other than Robert. He was disliked by Mr. Davis. Since Mr. Davis is the president of the client company, that's why we lost the contract. I'll talk to him about this later." My senior colleague, Thomas, encouraged me. Thomas always helped me out when Robert gave me a hard time. Robert constantly berated me, calling me incompetent. Even when I successfully brought in new clients or secured meetings, he would find some excuse to reassign me to menial tasks. Once again, Robert singled me out and dumped more menial work on me. Thomas always backed me up, somehow managing to get me assigned to client accounts again. But it was a never-ending cycle of being demoted to menial tasks by Robert. As long as Robert is my boss, there's no hope for my promotion. I'll be stuck as an entry-level employee, unable to escape menial tasks. "John, can I talk to you for a moment?" One day, Thomas called me over. "The other day, your junior, Alex, did some cold calling at a cosmetics company called DRS Factory. They're interested in doing business with us. So we need someone skilled to handle the negotiations. Since Alex is still inexperienced, John, we want you to take on this responsibility." I was surprised. "Are you sure it's okay for me to handle such an important meeting? I haven't been in charge of any clients recently because, well, Robert reassigned me. I don't have much experience and lack confidence," I replied, feeling hesitant. Thomas smiled and said, "Don't underestimate yourself. I remember when you secured a contract with a new client before. You have great sales skills. The feedback from clients you've handled has been positive. Believe in yourself. I've already convinced Robert to let you handle this, so you won't be reassigned. I'm counting on you." With that, Thomas smiled and said, "I have an errand to run now, so I'll be out for a while." And left. Left alone in the office, I felt a bit confused but decided not to waste the chance Thomas gave me. I got the details from Alex about DRS Factory and quickly scheduled a meeting for the next day. "Okay, I'll do my best." I motivated myself, determined to make the most of this opportunity. But just as I was feeling good and confident, I ran into Robert in the hallway. Hey! Don't get cocky just because you got assigned a client. If you fail to secure this contract, you're fired, he snarled as he walked past. His constant negativity was disheartening, but I couldn't let it get to me. I refocused and prepared for the next day. And so, the day of the meeting arrived. Hi, I'm Julia from DRS Factory. Is John available? We have a meeting scheduled today. As I was returning to my office from an errand, I heard a woman's voice as I passed by the front desk. Instinctively, I turned around. There stood a woman with smooth skin, chestnut-colored long hair, a fair complexion, and a great figure. I had spoken to her on the phone yesterday, but seeing her in person, I couldn't help but stare. She noticed my gaze and looked at me with a slightly curious face. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm John, the person in charge. Thank you for coming today. This way, please, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my nerves. Oh, so you're John. Nice to meet you, I'm Julia. I'm looking forward to our meeting today. Julia replied, looking straight into my eyes. Her large, bright eyes and well-defined features. She was undeniably beautiful. My heart raced and I felt embarrassed. I tried to look away from her face but then thought, she looks familiar. And found myself staring again. Just then, as if on cue, our CEO, Mr. Smith, walked by. Whoa, you're staring too much just because your business partner was a very beautiful woman. Mr. Smith joked, catching me off guard. I felt even more embarrassed and looked down, avoiding Julia's eyes. Mr. Smith then said, oh, and started walking toward Julia and me. Julia! Is that really you? You've grown so much. How old are you now? You've become quite a beauty, he said. I was confused by the situation. Uncle Ted. I can't believe I'm running into you here. I'm 28 now. I had no idea K&DO Corporation was your company. I had heard of a design firm but didn't know it was yours. Julia exclaimed, addressing Mr. Smith. Uncle. Noticing my confusion, Mr. Smith explained. Sorry about that. She is my niece, my sister's daughter, so we have different last names. I haven't seen her since she was in middle school, about 15 years ago. It's quite a surprise to see her all grown up. Mr. Smith laughed heartily. Seeing him laugh and looking at Julia, I understood. When I first saw Julia and thought she looked familiar, it was because she was Mr. Smith's niece. It's not unusual for an uncle and niece to resemble each other. I see. When I first met Julia, I thought she looked familiar. I never imagined it was because she resembles you, Mr. Smith. I said honestly. Julia laughed, really? Do I really look like Uncle Ted? It's the first time I've heard that. Mr. Smith chuckled, I was quite the handsome guy in my younger days, so she must take after me. His good-natured humor lightened the mood. Well, I'll leave the meeting to you. Even though she's my niece, make sure to prioritize our company's interests, right, John? Mr. Smith said, patting my shoulder before heading to his office upstairs. I recomposed myself and led Julia to the meeting room. Sorry about the mix-up. Let's start fresh. Nice to meet you. Julia said, slightly embarrassed, handing me her business card, to which I responded with mine. That day, we reviewed samples and brochures of her company's cosmetics and discussed the possibility of my company handling their packaging design. The meeting went well, and Julia seemed even more interested in doing business with us, so we ended the day on a positive note. Considering the contract favorably. A few days later, Julia came back for a second meeting. This time, the receptionist guided her to the meeting room, and I received an internal call to join her there. Julia had her hair tied back in a ponytail. She looked stunning. I almost said it out loud, but I kept it to myself, not wanting to sound weird. The second meeting also went smoothly, and it was nearly certain we'd finalize the contract. I mentally celebrated my success. Well, I'll confirm the delivery schedule and get back to you, I said, concluding the meeting. Julia then said, this is unrelated, but after we first met, I told my mom about you. When I mentioned that we were meeting at Ted's company, she asked about you and recognized your name from your business card. I was surprised. Your mother knows me? I asked. Not understanding the situation, Julia explained, "Yes, she saw your name and said, 'Isn't that Johnny?'" I was flustered. She called me Johnny. Does that mean she knew me from my childhood? "John, did you know Uncle Ted's family when you were a kid?" "Oh, I mean, Mr. Smith, sorry for calling him that," Julia said, looking a bit embarrassed. "Sorry about that. Yes, I did know the Smith family when I was a child. However, I don't remember meeting Mr. Smith's sister, your mother." I apologize for that. I apologized in return. "I'm sorry as well." Julia quickly followed up, No. It's perfectly normal to forget the adults you met as a child." Taking advantage of this topic, I shared a bit about my childhood with Julia. For me, Mr. Smith was originally my classmate's father. The Smith family and my family were neighbors, and Mr. Smith's eldest son, James, and I were classmates and good friends. My mother and James's mother, Mr. Smith's wife, were also good friends. My father passed away from an illness when I was young, so it was just my mother and me. The Smith family often looked out for us, inviting us to barbecues and outings. We had a close relationship. As I explained this, Julia added, "My mother mentioned that she often saw you at the Smith house when she visited Uncle Ted. She remembered you playing with James. She even talked with your mother a few times." I apologize for not remembering your mother from back then. "I was so focused on playing with James and the other kids," I said, amazed by the coincidence. I then told Julia about how my relationship with the Smith family changed during and after middle school. As you might know, James went to study abroad in Italy during middle school. He loved it there and has been living in Italy ever since. Mr. Smith and his wife supported his decision and funded his stay. Now that he's an adult, he's running his own business there and doing well." Julia's eyes lit up. "Yes, my mom told me about James. It's amazing that he's doing so well in Italy. I really respect him for that." However, she seemed to notice my slight change in expression. "Is there something you're not telling me?" she asked. I hesitated but decided to share. "Well, since it's a family matter, I'm not sure if I should be the one to talk about it. However, Mr. Smith has been a huge help in my life, and I feel it's important to be open." I continued, "When James went abroad, Mr. Smith was quite lonely. He used to teach us how to split wood, start fires, and do DIY projects. He enjoyed sharing these experiences with us. Since I lost my father when I was young, Mr. Smith became a father figure to me. After James left, Mr. Smith paid even more attention to me. During my teenage years, I drifted away due to typical teenage issues. But when I struggled to find stable employment after high school, Mr. Smith offered me a job here. That was when I was 25. Julia listened attentively, nodding. She then said, "I'm so glad you were there for Uncle Ted. I didn't know all this, but I'm grateful you shared it. It's amazing to have such a connection with a business partner. I'm really happy we met." I was so flattered by her words that I felt my face turning red. Actually, I was probably already blushing. Trying to stay professional, I replied, "I'm sorry for sharing so much personal history. I'll follow up with you about the delivery schedule soon." Julia responded formally, "I look forward to it." We both left the meeting room, and as we did, we ran into Robert. He glared at Julia and me. Julia, unaware that Robert was my boss, politely greeted him. Robert responded, "Are you John's client?" "Nice to meet you too," and handed Julia his business card. "I'm sorry you have to deal with someone as incompetent as John. If there are any issues, please contact me directly. I don't know why Mr. Smith keeps someone with such a low education level in our company," he muttered. Julia reluctantly gave him her business card in return. After Robert walked away, Julia said, "That man, he said he's a manager? He seemed very unpleasant. Are you okay?" I reassured her, "Oh, I'm used to it. He always looks down on me, but it's fine." I escorted her to the exit, saying, "I'll be in touch about the delivery schedule." The next day, our contract with DRS Factory was officially finalized, and I passed the project to the design team. I felt a bit sad that I wouldn't be in contact with Julia until the delivery date, but was thrilled the deal went through. I was grateful for Julia being such a good person and the unexpected connection we had. Thanks to Thomas, I also got more responsibilities with new clients, keeping me busy. 1 week later, I was suddenly called to meet with Mark, Robert's superior. Have I done something wrong? I anxiously approached Mark's desk. Sorry to call you out of the blue. We've had some sudden personnel changes. Mark said. I see. A personnel change? My heart pounded as I wondered where I might be reassigned. Yes. Dismissal effective today. Mark said bluntly. What? I was shocked and felt like my heart would leap out of my chest. Dismissal, effective today? I repeated his words in disbelief. Yes. Mark confirmed. I mustered the courage to ask, was there a complaint? As I said that, a thought struck me. Could it be that I made a mistake by talking about my childhood and family with Julia during the business meeting? But Julia didn't seem upset, and the meeting ended on a positive note. Wait a minute. I ran into Robert right after the meeting with Julia. He must have reported something negative about me to the higher-ups. That must be it. These thoughts raced through my mind. Well, something like that. Mark responded. He then continued, so Robert will be replaced by Thomas, who will be promoted to manager. And as for the assistant manager position, we think you're the right person for it. What? My exclamation came out in a strange pitch again. I couldn't grasp the situation. I'm being fired, yet I'm the right person for a promotion? Wait, am I being fired or promoted? When I said that, Mark looked puzzled and replied, what? Then he started chuckling. Sorry. I completely left out the subject. I'm a terrible boss. My apologies. The one being fired is Robert. Robert is out. Thomas is the new manager, and you are being promoted to assistant manager. I was stunned. Me, an assistant manager. That's right. Can I count on you? Actually, it's already decided, so do your best. Mark said with a grin. I was taken aback by the sudden promotion and Robert's dismissal. As I returned to my desk in a daze, Thomas was waiting for me. John, congratulations on your promotion. Well, for both of us. Let's do our best together. Thomas, now the new manager, put his arm around my shoulder. Yes. I'll do my best. I was thrilled that Thomas, a senior I respected, would be replacing Robert. But why did this sudden change happen? I asked Thomas. Do you know why Robert was fired? Thomas replied, I'm not sure about all the details, but Mark mentioned that Mr. Smith suddenly decided Robert couldn't be trusted anymore. Robert's bad attitude and behavior probably caught up with him. I had no way of knowing the full story. But it was a relief not to deal with Robert's constant negativity anymore. The entire office seemed to breathe a sigh of relief without Robert's toxic presence. About 6 months passed. I found fulfillment in my new role as assistant manager. The collaboration with Thomas was going well, leading to improved company performance. Our deal with DRS Factory, the first project I managed, was a success. They were impressed with our design work and wanted to continue working with us, increasing the volume of business. With my promotion, the responsibility for DRS Factory was handed over to my junior, Alex, which meant I no longer interacted directly with Julia. One day, as I was finishing work and leaving the office, I saw Mr. Smith coming down from the upper floor, talking to someone. I greeted him, good evening, and was about to exit the building when he called out, John. When I turned, the man next to Mr. Smith looked at me with wide eyes and said, John. Is that really you? It's been so long. The tall man with a slight tan sparked a flood of memories. It was James, Mr. Smith's eldest son. I immediately recognized his familiar features. James. You're back from Italy? I was thrilled. We hadn't seen each other since middle school, over 15 years ago. I had some downtime at work, so I came back for a short visit. I just landed at the airport, but since my dad's office is closer than home, I stopped by here first. James said. Your mom's been missing you more than I have, so you better head home soon. Mr. Smith said, pointing at his son, but his face showed how happy he was. He must have been delighted to see his son after such a long time. We're having a welcome home dinner for him tomorrow night at this restaurant. If you're free, join us. Mr. Smith said, handing me a flyer for a restaurant in a Manhattan high-rise. I'd love to. It sounds like a great chance to catch up with James. I was thrilled. Then, see you tomorrow, Mr. Smith said with a smile as he left with James. Feeling warm inside, I headed home. The next day, I went to the restaurant Mr. Smith mentioned and told the staff at the entrance that I was there for the Smith family. They led me to a large room labeled Smith family. Johnny. Long time no see. James's mother greeted me warmly as I entered. James, looking a bit embarrassed, said, "Honestly, this dinner is my mom's idea. I wish she wouldn't make such a big deal about my return." Well, you left for Italy when you were 14. Everyone missed you, including me, I replied, chuckling. At the dinner were Mr. and Mrs. Smith, James's sister Lily, an older man who introduced himself as James's uncle, and a cousin around our age. I felt a bit out of place among the Smith family, but Mrs. Smith quickly reassured me, "Johnny, you're like family to us." "There's still my aunt and cousin to come," James told me. I thought about how James was so well loved by his relatives. Then it hit me. James's aunt and cousin. As soon as I murmured that, a woman's voice said, "Sorry we're late." I turned to see an older woman and a young woman entering the room. The younger woman and I locked eyes immediately. "John," she called out. It was Julia, the representative from DRS Factory. It had been 6 months since we last saw each other after I handed over the account. "Julia works with our company. John is our assistant manager, so they know each other from work," Mr. Smith quickly explained to everyone. Julia's mother greeted me, "You must be Johnny. Julia has told me about you. Thank you for all your help." I responded, "The pleasure is mine. Thank you for your support," handing her my business card. "Let's keep it casual tonight," Mr. Smith said. The dinner started, and we shared stories about Italy and caught up on what we missed. Julia often spoke to me, and we had a good conversation. Then I learned a surprising fact. I told Julia about how I became assistant manager after Robert was suddenly fired and that I had to hand over the DRS Factory account to Alex. Just then, Mr. Smith joined our conversation. Julia was furious that day. She called me, angry, after her meeting with John, saying she met Robert in the hallway and he was incredibly rude. She said, "How can you keep someone like him in charge? You need to rethink your priorities." She really gave me an earful. Mr. Smith said. Julia turned bright red. "Ted. I told you not to tell John that," she exclaimed. I was taken aback. So that's what happened. I can't believe it was thanks to Julia that Robert got fired. Thomas became the manager, the work environment improved, and everyone is now happier. Thank you so much. I thanked Julia sincerely. Julia's mother, Linda, chimed in, "Ted, are you just following Julia's orders? Is that really okay? Don't get the wrong idea." I was already considering what to do about Robert, but Julia's call pushed me to make the decision. It was my judgment in the end. Mr. Smith laughed. Regardless, I realized how much Julia had helped and how Mr. Smith valued us. On the way home, Julia asked for my personal contact information instead of my work details, and we exchanged numbers. Julia was a wonderful, attractive woman, and I was already drawn to her. When she reached out and asked me on a date, I was over the moon. And so, what started as a chance meeting turned into something much more meaningful. However, as an employee at Mr. Smith's company, I felt it was presumptuous and awkward to consider developing a romantic relationship with Julia. Especially since she was Mr. Smith's niece. Despite my reservations, Mr. Smith would frequently ask, "How are things going with Julia?" whenever he saw me at work. James also messaged me from Italy, saying, "If you and Julia get married, I'll be happy to be your relative." To top it all off, Julia's mother, Linda, told her, "Bring John over to our house. I'll cook for you both." Julia passed this on to me. With the Smith family's encouragement, my relationship with Julia blossomed into a romance, and 2 years later, we got married. My work was going well, and I was extremely happy. I heard through the grapevine that Robert was now working as an employee at one of our client companies. According to one of our employees who saw him, he had mellowed out and was quietly working hard. On weekends, my mother would often say, "Julia? I'm going shopping with Julia's mom. Do you want to come along?" Yes. I'd love to. My wife, Julia, would happily join them. My mother and Julia's mother were originally good friends, and they were thrilled to become relatives through our marriage. The two moms and Julia often went shopping together. Life was peaceful and happy. Reflecting on it, I realized life is full of connections. I felt deeply grateful for the many wonderful connections in my life. Determined to give back to those around me. I focused on creating a workplace where my subordinates could find fulfillment, and on building a happy home with my beloved wife. Events that change our lives often come unexpectedly. I was inspired by a woman who was watching a campfire together, and my life took an unexpected turn with another woman who couldn't even set up a tent properly. My name is David, 30 years old, and currently unemployed. I just left the rescue team where I had worked for 12 years. I was camping alone to seek solace in nature and to think about my future. It was a so-called solo camping. Camping became my hobby since I had enjoyed the skills and training for outdoor living from my rescue team days. I used to enjoy solo camping on my days off even when I was with the rescue team. I liked to keep my gear to a minimum and enjoyed touring on my bike when I was alone. Camping gear these days was quite compact. Today, I swiftly set up camp and was soaking in the serene atmosphere of the mountains. Ah, this is bliss. I murmured to myself when I heard a rustling noise. Looking up, I saw a woman entering the campsite alone. I watched her for a while to see if she had company, but it seemed she was alone. That's unusual. There has been a huge camping boom lately. Solo camping for women wasn't uncommon. But that day was a weekday, and it was winter. I had expected to relax alone, but it seemed that plan was out the window. Since she was a woman, I figured she'd be scared if I approached her because I was just a man. I tried to show no sign of being present and continue enjoying the natural surroundings, but isn't she struggling a bit too much? Even though it was deep in the mountains, it was not particularly high altitude and was a mild area, so there was no snow this time of year. Still, solo camping in the winter was challenging for anyone. I assumed she was an experienced camper considering she came during this season, but it was taking her forever to set up her tent. I watched her discreetly, and it seemed she was using her phone to follow a tutorial while setting up her gear. After struggling for 30 minutes, she finally set up a one-pole tent, but it was oddly slanted to one side. Is it crooked? She seemed to notice something amiss and murmured, but oh well, she says cheerfully, moving on to the next task. The forecast mentioned strong winds today. Her optimistic attitude worried me, and I repeated in my mind that this is not good at all. I checked her tent pegs. They were driven deep enough that it shouldn't blow away or collapse. Probably. Next, she seemed to be attaching a hammock to the trees. A hammock in winter, was that really necessary? She tied the rope to the tree while checking her phone and exclaimed, "Done," then immediately tried to get on it. I decided to step in at this point. Stop. It's dangerous. You'll fall. I tried not to raise my voice too much to avoid scaring her, but I did speak firmly to prevent her from climbing on. Ha! She flinched at my sudden intervention. I approached her while signaling with my hand. Sorry to startle you. I know it's sudden and surprising that a guy just appeared out of nowhere, but I couldn't just watch. Mind if I fix this? I said this as I began untying the hammock rope. Sure. She shrugged, so I introduced myself. I'm David, by the way. Former rescue team member. I'm quite used to this kind of stuff. When I introduced myself, the woman seemed to relax a bit. My background as a former rescue team member seemed to reassure her. My name's Emily. Sorry for the trouble, David. I noticed how incredibly beautiful she was. Her features were striking, with straight hair down to her shoulders. Though I couldn't see her figure well due to her layers, her legs and jeans were long and slender. I'm fairly tall, but she was tall for a woman too. I got a little nervous when I thought the woman was attractive. But since the woman was watching my hands with great interest, I decided to give a little lecture. After you pass the rope through this loop, pull it tight. It was pretty loose before. Give it a good tug. Emily hesitantly spoke up. I was worried about hurting the tree. Her concern was touching, and I couldn't help but smile. If you're worried about that, we can use some padding. A towel would work. I fetched a few towels I had and wrapped them around the tree, then tied the rope again, explaining each step. We finally got the hammock securely set up. Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. I quickly asked Emily, who was already swinging in the hammock. Can I fix the tent, too? It's a bit crooked. Her eyes lit up. Really? Please do. I noticed it was off, but after 30 minutes, I didn't have the energy to take it apart. She got out of the hammock, and I began showing her how to properly set up the tent. If all the pegs aren't evenly driven, it will lean. Start by getting the shape right, then make sure all the pegs are equally secure. I demonstrated by anchoring the tent's base to the ground. With her help, we soon had a perfectly pitched one-pole tent. Wow, it's a perfect triangle now. Thank you. I asked, waving my hand. No problem. Is this camping your first time in a while? It's almost my first time. I was surprised by the unexpected answer. Wait, your first time? Alone? In the winter? Isn't that a bit challenging? Why? She smiled wryly at my barrage of questions. I did some research with videos. I thought I'd be okay. If it gets tough, I can just ask the manager. But the admin building is far away. I bit back the urge to lecture her on the dangers of underestimating winter camping since I noticed the somber expression on her face. It's a memorial camp for my best friend, Jenna. Her sudden revelation chilled me. Emily's friend Jenna loved the outdoors and camped all year round. In contrast, Emily was an indoor person who often refused Jenna's camping invitations, citing bugs in the summer and the cold in the winter. Sometimes I agreed to go, but Jenna did most of the preparations. She made it look so easy, so I never thought I'd struggle this much. Emily scratched her head with a wry smile. These past few years, I've been so busy with work that I couldn't go camping with her much. I hadn't heard from her for a while, but I was too caught up with work to think much of it. When I got a call from Jenna's mom, I regretted not noticing anything sooner. I rushed to the hospital she mentioned and found a gaunt Jenna lying in bed. Emily's voice trembled. I panicked. You don't have to force yourself to talk about it. It's okay. I'm not the right person to hear this. I was on the verge of tears myself. Emily smiled as she saw me like this. You're kind, thank you. She didn't want me to see her like that, but her mom called me, and I'm glad I got to see her one last time. On that hospital bed, Jenna asked me to take her camping gear as a keepsake. I told her I couldn't use it, but she said she'd be happy just knowing her beloved gear was with me. She said if I kept it close, she'd probably be there with me too. I patted Emily's back as she sobbed and was looking at the one-pole tent. It was in excellent condition, though it was well used. She must have maintained it meticulously. Emily began to calm down as she gazed lovingly at the tent. After Jenna's funeral, some time passed, and I thought I'd give it a try, but I guess just diving in wasn't the best idea. She said this with a thin smile and her eyes red from crying. Jenna's dream was to create a campsite full of smiles. She always talked about it. I wanted to carry on that dream someday. But who knows how long it'll take at this rate. Her resigned tone pulled at my heartstrings. I seemed to be highly empathetic. Emily's pain from losing her irreplaceable friend and her frustration at not being able to fulfill her friend's dream mixed together in my heart. And it made me feel down. Emily noticed this and forced a bright smile. Sorry for the downer. How about I make some coffee? I decided to help her with the campfire instead of telling her I might be quicker on my own. You know, I have a favorite mug. Emily rummaged through her backpack and said, "Ta-da!" And she held out a stainless steel mug in front of me. I was taken aback. This logo. Emily beamed when I asked in a daze, cute, right? Jenna designed it. She made these camping stickers and had the same logo engraved on this mug. I staggered to my feet. I went to my bike parked at the campsite entrance and pulled out my helmet. When I showed it to Emily, her eyes widened in shock. That sticker. On the side of my helmet was the same logo as on her mug. I got this camping sticker during a similar winter camping trip. At the time, I was contemplating quitting the rescue team. I was advised to join the rescue team because of my large build, physical strength, and endurance in high school. The thought of working on site during disasters fascinated me. I had volunteered briefly during a local disaster in high school and helped with debris removal, and had seen rescue teams in action. Their coordinated efforts and efficiency left a strong impression on me. Could I become one of those rescue workers? There was the possibility of becoming what I admired. I was strongly drawn to a career in the rescue team, something I hadn't considered before. And so, I joined the rescue team. The training was tough, but I had no trouble with the physical demands. The joy of seeing someone rescued after hours of effort was indescribable. But the pain of lost lives was equally intense. And over time, the pain began to outweigh the joy. The hierarchy within the team was strict. Reprimands from superiors were a daily occurrence. I understood it was for the purpose of training and discipline. I accepted it as my responsibility and endured it when I was scolded. But it became unbearable to see others being reprimanded as if their pain were my own. It calmed me when I went camping on my days off, but after a day at the rescue team seeing others being reprimanded, my heart would feel heavy again. Living through such days, I was feeling pretty down at the time. That day, I visited a campsite to soothe my week's weary soul as usual. The manager invited me to join a big campfire they were having. Watching the flickering flames made me feel inexplicably at peace. I joined the campfire to see the large flames. While sipping hot wine and staring blankly, tears unexpectedly rolled down my cheeks. As I hurried to wipe them away, a woman sat down next to me. "What's wrong?" I looked up to see a woman with short hair and big eyes trying to look into my face. I brushed it off and said it was nothing, but she replied, "I'm just a stranger you'll never see again. Sharing might make you feel better." So, I talked about what was on my mind. She sighed and said sharply after listening to everything, "You're too kind. You probably have strong empathy." I know someone like that. They get sick or have headaches in noisy places or when they see someone being yelled at. Do you feel that way too? Her words made me realize something. I'd been experiencing frequent severe headaches those days. They always came when I was emotionally exhausted. I knew it. "I think you'd be better suited to a job where you can be close to nature, animals, or even people." Her words struck a chord with me, but it is difficult to quit the rescue team. We need an approval from our superior. I may not be able to be approved with this kind of reason. When I showed signs of weakness, the woman rummaged through her bag and said, "Here, take this," as she handed me a sticker. It was a cute illustration of a girl raising her fist. That's my original camping sticker. Campers make and trade these. Mine represents a determination to visit many campsites. But after listening to everything, it's a fist of courage for you. Be brave. It's your life. She smiled as she said that. I felt like the cute girl in the illustration was giving me courage. Emily listened to my story with tears in her eyes. We didn't exchange contact info, so that was it. It took me a year to gather the courage, but this sticker gave me the strength to quit. As I spoke, Emily said, touching the sticker, "Jenna, she always gave courage to everyone, no matter what." When I said I couldn't bear her being gone, she told me, "I'll always be with you." This sticker is me. Whenever something happens, this sticker will always encourage you. Another tear rolled down Emily's cheek. Then she looked at me with determination. "Hey, would you run a campsite with me?" She had seemed to give up on running the campground earlier. When the topic came up again, I was surprised. "Weren't you giving up on that?" She nodded once. Then she looked at me directly again. "After hearing your story, I can't give up. Don't you think it's fate? That Jenna brought us together?" Her words left me speechless. "I feel like I can do it if you're with me, David." I furrowed my brows. Though I'm using it now, do campsites even make money? Today, I only paid $10 for this free site, plus $5 for firewood. Emily thumped her chest. "Leave it to me. I'm a freelance web designer. I can work from anywhere, and I'm quite successful. I have savings. And I think my freelance income can cover your salary while we manage the campsite." She said something incredible. "No way, I can't let a woman pay my salary." She frowned. "I'm the boss, and you're the employee. It's normal for me to pay you." It doesn't matter where the money comes from, right? That made sense. Emily smiled slyly. Of course, you'll be working hard. How about a campsite with an instructor for beginners like me? Wouldn't that be great? It seemed she already had ideas in mind. Beginner plans, river fishing plans, rope work plans, and family plans. We'll create all sorts of plans. And you'll be the instructor for all of them. Hearing her ideas, one popped into my head as well. I wanted to teach children how to play in the mountains with the family plan. Emily laughed, seeing my enthusiasm. I'll handle the indoor tasks, and you'll take care of the outdoor work. Let's make Jenna's dream come true together. At that point, I decided to go for it. Jenna gave me courage. Let's fulfill the dream she couldn't. We took our first steps towards what seemed like a fantasy. I still wasn't sure if it would come true, and I was torn about how seriously to take this new endeavor. But 2 days after parting ways with Emily at the campsite, she contacted me about a mountain she was thinking of buying and asked for my opinion on its location and other aspects. Isn't she moving a bit too fast? The place she found had well-maintained surrounding roads and made it accessible by car or bike. There was a small but beautiful river, and it was wonderfully quiet once we stepped into the mountain. Though it could only be reached by car, we could offer a shuttle service for a few people. There was also a nearby national park that could offer potential partnerships. Apparently, Emily had been gathering information about campsites whenever Jenna talked about her dreams. How did you find such a great spot so easily? I was impressed and asked, and Emily had a big smile. From now on, the main maintenance is up to you. I quit looking for a new job. I resolved to devote myself to this campsite. A year later, it was the day before the campsite's grand opening. Emily's efforts since then have been incredible. Only the required permits and applications were enormous. It took a particularly long time to get permission to cut down some trees. Once everything was in place and we got the green light, it was my turn. I had obtained all the necessary licenses when I was waiting for various approvals, so it was challenging but smooth. We finally completed our campsite thanks to the help of friends and sometimes relying on contractors. Though it only had 3 sites, we separated areas for families, solo campers, and groups based on their purpose. Most camping equipment including tents could be rented if reserved in advance, though availability of tents was limited. We minimized the use of electricity because we wanted everyone to enjoy nature as much as possible. Instead, we offered support for any inconveniences. Emily and I made and drank hot wine sitting around a small campfire in the middle of the small site. It's delicious. She smiled at me with a relieved expression. This campsite turned out so beautifully. I thought making a campsite was just a dream. I'm really glad to meet you, David. Thank you. She smiled warmly. I straightened up. I'm glad I met you that day too, Emily. And meeting Jenna. I'm grateful. Her courage helped me quit, and your guidance led me to my new job. I was struggling. The rescue team work was fulfilling, and I still admired it. I was searching for something I could do next. Something where I could use the skills I developed in the rescue team. The opportunity to run a campsite seemed like a godsend. I never imagined I'd be running a campsite. Emily smiled at my words. Right. Neither of us ever thought we'd be running a campsite. And yet, we've made it happen. Isn't that amazing? I nodded. And thanks to your incredible promotion efforts, tomorrow's going to be busy. I wonder if I can handle it all. We had a packed schedule. The beginner plans and family plans got very popular, and there were many reservations for the campfire plan. So we planned to build a large campfire with everyone tomorrow. You can do it, David. Emily's cheeks were slightly flushed from the hot wine and the fire, and she looked at me with dreamy eyes. My heart skipped a beat at her gaze. Tomorrow would be extremely busy. It would be best to get some sleep early, and it might be wise to keep our relationship professional. Though I intended to keep things professional, my mouth moved on its own. Emily. I like you. I uttered a single word softly. I mumbled as feeling drowsy. Emily looked slightly confused. You like me? Isn't it Jenna? The mention of Jenna surprised me too. Jenna? Why? Emily looked up slightly. She seemed to be thinking. Was she already drunk? Well, you said Jenna gave you courage, right? You cherished the sticker on your helmet, supported her dream, and worked hard to build this campsite. Isn't that for her? I shook my head vigorously. No. Well, yes, but no. I was chasing your dream, Emily. She widened her eyes in surprise. Really? Not for Jenna? But for me? Of course. I didn't even exchange contact info with Jenna. Sure, she gave me courage, but I did all this for you. But you said we should fulfill Jenna's dream. For Jenna. That's because you said it first. I was just following your lead. Indeed, we both said we wanted to fulfill Jenna's dream when we talked about building the campsite. But this misunderstanding was too much. Our voices echoed through the quiet mountains. After arguing for a while, silence fell, and Emily started to cry. As I scrambled to comfort her, she said, I always thought it was for Jenna. That was fine since I love Jenna, too. But actually, I've hoped you'd see me too. I felt like collapsing in exhaustion. Instead, I hugged her. I've always liked you, Emily. I ran headlong into this project because you wanted to make Jenna's dream come true. Now, please listen to my wish too. She nodded while trembling in my arms. I'm so happy. I've always liked you too, David. We were under the star-filled sky with the crackling of a small campfire and the crisp mountain air. The next day, our new campground was set to open. It was at this place that Emily and I finally came together. And a few years later. Okay, I'll hand out the bingo cards. I pulled out bingo cards for a nature game as part of the family plan. Can you find the items listed? Green things, black things, things that smell nice, let's find them and complete 3 rows of bingo. My son Jake interrupted as I was explaining the game. He insisted on joining, so I got permission from the family and let him join in. Just then, Emily walked over with a few women. David, I'm off to the trekking tour. Can you take care of the main office? Surprised at how quickly time passed, I agreed. Got it. Be careful. I added a rule limiting the bingo game area to the family site visible from the main office and shouted, Ready, go. The kids ran off with smiles on their faces. I briefly followed Emily with my eyes watching the family before moving closer to the office. Emily used to be quite the indoor type. But now she has been captivated by the flowers and birds that adorn the place ever since she started running the campground. She even organizes trekking tours and guides them whenever there are reservations. Emily's beginner-friendly courses are popular among women who aren't very confident in their stamina since she was originally an indoor person. Though I mainly managed the campsite, I volunteered whenever disasters struck, thanks to the confidence gained from my rescue team days. Joining the rescue team and working there had been a source of pride. I deeply respect the rescue workers who dedicate themselves to serving the country and its people. The skills and strength I developed in the rescue team, such as debris removal, are now used to help disaster-stricken areas. My wife Emily and our child support my activity wholeheartedly. When I need to go, Emily adjusts the reservation numbers, calls on friends for help, or modifies plans to accommodate the situation. Our guests are always understanding, though these changes are sudden. My eyes fall on a sticker inside the main building. Campers add their stickers, but there's a special place for Jenna's sticker. Emily replaces it whenever it fades. I silently addressed the sticker. Jenna. Thanks to you, I've met my beloved wife, our child, and seen so many smiles at this campsite. Thank you for giving me the courage. Lost in thought, I noticed a car pulling into the parking lot. It's time to welcome the next guests. Look. I found something yellow, a dandelion. Just one more for bingo. I walked toward the main building with the sound of children enjoying the field bingo in the background.